Hello, friends. Now you will hear a brief summary of the movie Waist Deep. South Los Angeles is drowning in crime, so when Otis went to pick up his son from school, he tossed a gun into the glove compartment. Otis's cousin, Lucky, was supposed to pick up Junior, but as always, he let him down. The boy waited in the schoolyard for half an hour. Otis promised that he would never leave his son alone. Junior found the gun in the glove compartment. His father took the piece away and stuffed it into his waistband. After a while, Junior fell asleep, and Otis moved him to the back seat. In a traffic jam, Otis got distracted by a gorgeous woman walking past his car. The girl tried to sell him a stolen suit. Otis declined, but a minute later, a man with a gun attacked him, punched him in the face, and threw him out of the car. Otis got up and sprinted after the vehicle. His son was still inside. The carjackers had backup in another car, but soon they crashed into a pickup truck. A shootout broke out, and Otis took down both gangsters. He wounded the car thief in the shoulder. Otis was about to take another shot, but then Junior appeared and called for his dad's help. Otis kept running after the car but eventually ran out of breath and stopped. Then he noticed the woman who had distracted him earlier. He realized that Coco was working with the carjacker and pointed a gun at her to make her talk. Coco admitted that the car was being taken to a garage. Otis dragged her along, but the garage was empty. One way or another, Otis needed a car. He decided to steal one from the garage, but just then, Coco's boyfriend barged in and started beating her, accusing her of stealing from him. Otis jumped in and beat the guy unconscious. Then, he stole a car. He hoped Coco would help him find his son, but after taking a hit to the stomach, she was coughing up blood. Otis decided to back off and offered to take her home. But home was no longer an option. The thief had stolen her purse with the money and the suit while Otis was interrogating her. She was going to get beaten up again for that. Otis promised to give her money if she helped find Junior. The pair drove into the ghetto, where violence was everywhere. Otis lashed out at his cousin. If Lucky had picked up Junior, none of this would have happened. Lucky was a gangster too. He promised to find out what was going on. Otis told Coco that he used to be a criminal himself, but after serving 6 years in prison, he decided to go straight. He was released on parole only a month ago, so things weren't looking good for him. That's why he couldn't go to the police. Just then, the TV showed security footage of Otis gunning down 2 men. Lucky worked for a crime boss called Big Meat. Just now, in front of his subordinates, Big Meat chopped off the hand of an unlucky dealer who failed to pay his dues on time. In one of the rooms, a thug is holding the kidnapped boy. Lucky told Otis about it. Big Meat wants him to pay a $100,000 ransom. The crime boss is convinced that the ex-con has the money stashed away from his last heist. The cash needs to be delivered by tomorrow evening. One way or another, Otis has to find the money. Coco used to work for Big Meat. He's not someone to mess with. She suggested robbing P-Money, the gangster she currently works for. P-Money sells stolen designer clothes. A reluctant employee let Otis into the underground boutique. He pretended to be Coco's boyfriend and immediately asked to use the restroom. In reality, Otis was searching for cash, and soon found some. The rest was locked in a safe. Otis pulled a gun on one of P-Money's lackeys and forced him to open it, lying that Big Meat had sent him. He came up with a plan to pit the 2 crime bosses against each other so their gangs would wipe each other out. Coco entered P-Money's hideout, where his crew was hanging out, and asked to use the bathroom. On the 2nd floor, she let Otis inside. He pulled a bandana over his face and robbed the gang again. Ahead, a police checkpoint forced them to take a detour through a wealthy neighborhood. Coco had never been outside the ghetto before. Otis pulled up to Big Meat's mansion. It was time to pay him a visit and loot everything valuable. After struggling with the alarm system, the thief finally got inside. Coco followed. They dumped their haul onto the bed, when suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was the police. Coco pretended to be the crime boss's lover, just stepping out of the shower. She claimed she wasn't around often, which was why she forgot the alarm code. She flirted with the black officer and asked for his phone number. The ruse worked, and the burglars went back to counting their cash. Unfortunately, it was still far from enough. However, they found keys with strange codes, keys to various bank vaults. In the morning, Otis visited one of the banks and asked to be escorted to a safe deposit box. Coco arrived shortly after in a seductive outfit, drawing the guard's attention. When the manager asked for Otis's ID, Coco caused a scene. The manager got distracted and forgot to check the documents, so Otis was led to the vault. However, another bank employee knew that the deposit box belonged to Big Meat. Otis had no choice but to pull a gun on her. No one even noticed him leaving the building. Everyone was too busy watching the crazy woman's meltdown. The robbers vanished into a crowd of demonstrators, slipping away from the police. The second heist played out differently. This time, Otis hid his face, and Coco pretended to be a hostage. At the third bank, she faked an epileptic seizure. They gathered $50,000. Otis hoped to get another $90,000 by selling the stolen jewelry. Half of that amount, he planned to give to Coco. Then Lucky called. He offered to deliver the money to Big Meat himself. After all, they were family. He was deeply worried about Junior. Lucky drove to meet Otis, but before he got there, armed gangsters from his own crew ambushed him. They shoved him into Big Meat's car. The problem was, Lucky also owed the crime boss money, and he was about to lose a hand, or worse. Otis packed the cash into a bag. Coco confided that she dreamed of escaping this hellhole and traveling the world. She wanted to start with a beautiful town in Mexico. Otis gifted her a stolen diamond necklace. The moment was enough for Coco to give herself to him, though Otis wasn't really in the mood. He then revealed that he and Big Meat used to rob banks together, but the thug eventually decided to kill him. That's when Otis took off with $100,000 from their last job and disappeared. The only person he trusted was his godmother. He once asked her to hide the money for him. After that, he never saw either her or the cash again. Coco had also lost a child. Her son was killed by a stray bullet while playing outside during a gang shootout. Lucky called again, telling Otis where to bring the money. Before heading to Big Meat, they had to sell the jewelry. Lucky volunteered to handle it since Otis couldn't afford to be seen anywhere. Lucky arrived at Big Meat's hideout, throwing down all the jewelry in front of him. The stash was worth at least $200,000, far more than what he owed. So he demanded that the boss give him $90,000, and they'd be even. But Big Meat had questions. Where did Lucky get all this? Lucky lied, saying he had robbed a couple of rich kids the night before. There was just one problem: all these jewels belonged to Big Meat. The bank robbers had been targeting his personal vaults. If Lucky wanted any chance of surviving, he had to return everything else, tonight. He immediately called Otis, giving him an address. Something felt off. Lucky had told him to come straight to Big Meat's base. At the last moment, Otis changed the meeting location and dropped off Coco. Finally, he saw his son again. But Big Meat wasn't letting Junior go until he got all his money back. Otis tossed the bag onto the ground. One of Meat's men aimed his gun at Otis and Junior, ready to execute them, until Lucky stepped in, sacrificing himself. Otis gunned down the remaining henchmen. Lucky took a bullet to the chest. Now, only Big Meat was left. After a fierce shootout, the two men stood face to face. Big Meat knew Otis had no one in this world but his son. That's why the bastard kidnapped him. The bandit forgot to count his bullets and was shot on the spot. Now, Lucky needed to be saved. The wounded man refused to go to the hospital, so Otis had to stop at a gas station to patch up his cousin's wound. The cashier refused to give him the restroom key until the man tossed him a green bill. Lucky was dragged into a filthy restroom and sat on the toilet. They needed to find bandages and hydrogen peroxide. Coco had already run to get them. At that moment, the TV started showing images of the wanted robbers. The cashier recognized Coco but had no intention of calling the cops. Instead, the strange guy was fascinated by the modern-day Bonnie and Clyde and even asked Coco for an autograph. Lucky received some basic medical help, and the group set off toward the Mexican border. Suddenly, Otis noticed that his cousin had passed out and got distracted from the road. He nearly crashed, attracting police attention. Lucky eventually succumbed to his wounds, and now the others had to escape the police chase. Otis floored the gas pedal as more patrol cars joined the pursuit. A helicopter loomed overhead. Otis made a sharp turn, leaving the cops behind. Now, he needed to hide from the chopper. After several risky maneuvers, he pulled into a parking lot and stopped. They had to split up. Coco and Junior would hide in one of the parked cars while Otis lured the police away. Coco promised to take care of the boy. Otis drove off the lot, and all the police cars immediately followed him. Meanwhile, Coco and Junior calmly drove in the opposite direction. They agreed to call each other in 10 minutes. Otis was still trying to lose the cops. He asked Coco the name of that beautiful Mexican town where they were supposed to meet, but both understood it would never happen. Otis asked to speak to Junior one last time. The boy asked him to buy a toy horse, and Coco confessed her love for Otis. The fugitive raced into the docks. Realizing he was trapped, he stopped. The police stepped out of their vehicles and aimed their weapons at him. But Otis hit the gas one last time and plunged into the water at full speed. The car sank instantly. Coco understood, it was over. She and Junior crossed the border and settled in a small Mexican town with a breathtaking view. The boy started attending the local school, and Coco, as promised, raised him as if he were her own son. One day, as they walked along the beach, a familiar figure appeared in the distance. It was Otis, carrying the promised toy horse. And that's where the movie ends. Thank you for watching. See you soon.